All right. So, hello, and again, I apologize for the technological hijinks that have just occurred, but I appreciate you being patient with us. For those of you watching this post event at this point, my name is Lisa Fabiny-Kiser. I am the CEO of SENS Research Foundation, and I am so excited to finally get a chance to talk with Marco Quarta, who is the CEO of Phaedon. Am I saying that right? Phaedon Institute?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you for being here. Thank you for talking with me. And I'm really excited to hear really about you and about why you started the organization, Phaedon, and what your plans are. So you've been in the space for a really long time. Um, I'm not saying that with age in mind. I'm just saying that you've been really a part of the longevity space kind of everywhere in it. It looks like you have your Rubedo Life Sciences that you are a founder of, am I right? And
hmm
Turn Biotechnologies, which we are really familiar with, that you are also a founder of. And you've worked in biotech and you have a degree in bioengineering. How did all of this start? How did you even get interested in the longevity space?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure. And as I said, hopefully next time we'll have an in-person chat. But I'm a big fan of Science Foundation, so we're really happy to share some of the work we're doing at the Phaedon Institute and beyond. How did I start? Let's say my interest in aging starts as a very young age. I was a little kid. I was 5 when I had this inspiration insight that I already knew I wanted to be a scientist because I have several scientists in the family, role models. And so that was kind of my idea, very early days. But then I remember that day I decided I want to be a scientist that will understand aging and change it, curing everything by naively. I'm not that naive anymore like that, but I thought somewhat can be changed, if not cured. And and that was it. I was asking. I went to my parents. Said, what do you want to do? I said, yeah, I want to cure aging. I said, what? Okay, well, we'll help you. So relatives started to give me stuff. Microscope, chemistry, lab work. This is still from my very first lab that I carry with me. So at just 6, I was doing my first experiments and playing, of course, but trying to learn science. But I never stopped. That was not just an early inspiration. So all my studies, what I've been doing, my interest has always been aligned towards that. My readings of philosophy, that's my interest in alchemy, can try to understand what people understood so far. So that's really, it was my personal driver. And that's the way, what I chose to study, who I wanted to study with. Right? I did my first graduate thesis work under a Nobel laureate, Rita Levi-Montalcini, who discovered the neural growth factor and studying on brain aging and brain regeneration, chronic pain. And after that, I did my PhD in neuroscience, working also in skeletal muscle, in physiology and regeneration. And that's how I was connected. I connected with Tom Rand at Stanford. Excuse me, and who called me here in California, where I came and did my postdoc with him, working on aging and stem cell biology. And then I stayed at Stanford. I started my group, the research group, working on regenerative medicine, aging, rejuvenation. And then there is a story that started a few companies on the way. And I'm continuing now my mission, and maybe less in basic biology and more in translational, because my goal has always been doing something that can help people, that I can give this back to people. And that's my personal drive. It was not doing it for my own curiosity, but to offer something to people that can help.
That's beautiful. And it's really nice to hear that your parents were so supportive. I'm not sure many of us have parents that when you say to them, I'm really interested in curing aging, they go, all right, we'll support you. Like that's lovely to have that kind of family support behind you in your work. So how has the landscape changed since you really entered kind of the longevity aging field? Has things changed I mean, I know my perspective, but I've only been in it for about 13 years or so. So how has it changed for you?
There have been, I think, many phases. We maybe are at the 3.0, to my personal idea. There was a, the day in the maybe 90s through the 2000 to now, maybe when this idea scientifically of targeting biological aging process as a therapeutic opportunity started to be more real. And so if you remember the Geron early now targeting telomere, again, the Bay Area was one of the center for that. And I remember I was still very young when I was reading those articles. I was so excited about this company and these initiatives back then. And so that thing from there would been probably a couple of waves as new science came together, but it was still very pioneer. I think the major change that over the past 10 years, probably those multiple fields of science started to converge and give us better clarity. I honestly don't think we have clarity enough. Honestly, I don't think we're never even close to understand the aging process. That's my personal opinion. I think we have a very good understanding, but it's probably a starting point to lots of work that needs to be done. But in this last wave, I think now we have real therapeutic opportunities that we can leverage to start to test these hypotheses as a disease modifying interventions, or at least as a therapeutic opportunities for chronic disease of aging. And which, to be clear, doesn't mean that will translate in necessarily change the trajectory of aging. There is a false perception of this, but you targeting biological aging process, name it, whatever it is, senescence, epigenetic reprogramming, or something else, and showing that you can have an efficacy of extreme cases of aging after onset of disease, where things are like start to go degenerate. That's a great result. It would be a great achievement, but that doesn't mean that therefore those therapies can also promote and healthy aging and prevent those diseases, etc. This is to be seen. I think where we are now is that we have a new way to treat unmet medical needs, chronic diseases, by approaching this biological aging process. But there is still work to do to really thinking about cure aging, if you will.
Absolutely. I agree 110% across the board. I mean, it's one of the reasons why at SRF we don't mess with metabolism, is what we call it, right? Because there's so much that we don't know. There's still so much to learn and to address to really make a real impact on the aging process in general. I just completely agree. So you launched the Phaedon Institute in 2022. And why? I mean, clearly there's a lot that needs to be done in the aging space, but what specifically was your vision and the need that you saw specifically in the nonprofit space that encouraged you to start a new nonprofit?
Yeah, it started from the truth is, it started from a personal frustration of mine that I had over the recent years, really over the past probably 3-4 years, that somewhat is a side effect, if you will, of this growing phase of the longevity medicine, aging, let's say, science field that, definitely grew recently. There have been new initiatives, new companies, funds, and that has been accelerating the field, which is great. It's exciting. It exposed more to the mainstream media. We see more and more articles talking about that, right? From the billionaire who wants to stay young to the Wall Street Journal that is looking at those therapies, etc. So these are good, but my frustration more came to the fact that there was too much. Maybe people comment, why did you start a new organization? There are already so many around longevity aging. And I said, well, that's exactly why. And I think that is my personal frustration came to the fact that this terminal aging before, right, anti-aging, who got diluted through more now cosmetics and things that are maybe also unrelated. And more recently, the concept of longevity or longevity medicine is becoming very diluted and associated with pseudoscience or even snake oil. And so it's a mix and match of too many things. Then when I sometimes speak with people that are outside the field, it becomes you have to do a lot of work to try to make clarity and really kind of separate and sort what makes sense, what is not. And this is true also as going to specific conferences. Maybe, yes, the best one, you still speak science and this is great, good science. But sometimes under the hat or the label of longevity, there is everything. So you never go deep, you go wide and you never go deep enough. And again, some of the ideas that are circulating unless you're really an expert of the field, sometimes are outdated or not specific enough. An example, and that's why we started with this first initiative that we did a couple of weeks ago at the Phaedon Institute, not the Therapeutic Summit, is an example. When we're talking about cellular senescence, I still hear stories that are like 5, 10 years old, what they are, what they do, what worked, what didn't. And, and that's not good for I'm nobody really. So that's why I say, well, I think what is missing is raising the bar from a scientific standpoint, a scientific society where we can put together key opinion leaders, shareholders, and focus on each area of this field, of the longevity field. So not mixing all together, because it doesn't mean anything. Let's say, let's talk about biology. And now we talk about, I don't know, specific pathways, right? And so that there's a word around it. So you can't, yes, it's part of biology, but it's specific, ubiquitination of, I don't know, there's specific areas. And there are conferences about that. There are journals, scientific journals around that. So nobody wants to mix the two things. But longevity was not there yet. So the Phaedon Institute wants to create different forums to put together people that are working on a specific scientific field and therapeutic development areas for each area and go deep instead of wide. And so you can really understand what makes sense, what should be done, what we learn, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, and not just academics, but across the areas. So the Therapeutic Summit is a first example, but reflects how the Phaedon Institute operates. We had, key opinion leaders from academy, from clinics, from industry, all the companies working, developing different therapeutics around cellular senescence, big pharma, large pharma. We had the CSO Novartis, VP from Eli Lilly, Pharmaceuticals, Berger Ingelheim, who came to discuss their point of view. And I was glad to hear that their point is, yeah, targeting senescent cells absolutely works. That came from large pharma, doesn't care. The problem is how to translate it into therapeutics. There are challenges, and the senescent cells are not all the same. So thinking about, let's do a senolytic. What's the best senolytic doesn't make sense at all, because it's like saying, what is the best chemotherapy? Or what are you trying to treat?
That's so interesting. I didn't realize that places like Boehringer Ingelheim was interested in senescence or considered that. Or so you tried this, the Therapeutic Summit, and one of our people attended, Dr. Amit Sharma, and he raved about it. So that's great. But do you feel like you actually got that deep dive that you were looking for? I mean, it seems like you had a good spread of related parties, right, to senescence, for lack of a better term. Do you feel like you guys got deep, or did you feel like you were again rehashing a lot of what everyone's always been saying? Right? Because
no,
I agree with you
actually,
that we go to these conferences and oftentimes you hear the same thing, you hear the same stories. You're right, over and over again, and And often you're even preaching to the same crowds. And so I'm really curious if you think that you succeeded in creating that deep dive.
I think I did. I know it was an experiment, as I was not sure, but not because of my words, but because as we collected feedback from the speakers and the attendees, and we kept the event fairly close. So it was capped at 100 people and was mostly on invitation or on a peer review. We want to put people in a room that could contribute to the discussion in a meaningful way. And so then we asked feedback to people, to the attendees and the speakers, and I was glad to hear that. And so, well, that was new, and it's very refreshing to hear different points of view. Maybe, hearing the academics saying, "Oh my God, I never even thought how pharma sees this, or a venture capital sees this." Because we invited also, we had a roundtable for venture capital and financing, at the roundtable discussing biomarkers, clinicians. People they don't know that there are more than 30 clinical trials ongoing targeting cellular senescence. And actually, the results are very promising. I mean, everybody talks about how the first trial of Unity failed. Nobody talks about how the last trial actually looks really amazing. And this is years ago. So the field is moving on. And I think the experiment worked because putting together the different angles and have those people talking was mind-opening in many ways for everybody of each party that maybe never interacted or heard others at different stages of development or research. So yeah, I think of course there's more we could do and improve as well, but I'm pretty happy
Sounds
with
like
the first experiment.
it sounds like a great start, honestly. I was actually recently in Japan where they had an independent aging conference, and they brought in the aging world in the UN and the WHO, and as separated from what we consider the longevity world, right? And it astonished me to really see the breadth of people supporting aging interventions. That really, when you attend a lot of these conferences that are very longevity focused, you don't talk to these people. They're not included. The regulatory aspects aren't considered strongly. And so I love what you're doing. I love the idea of putting those people, specific targeted people in a room together and kind of creating an intimate situation where you're able to problem solve with people who have the information and the means to solve the problem.
Mhm.
It's brilliant, honestly, and it's probably been long needed. So I'm grateful that you're doing it. Is that what Phaedon's going to be focusing on? Is creating these deep dive summits, or do you have other areas that you want to be working on as well?
Yeah, so that's definitely one. Now building those forums, and cellular senescence was one first, and of course, it's one of my areas of interest. We were working at Rubedo Life Sciences, but the next, so we want to do more, right? Working on other therapeutic and research area focused. So, we're thinking about maybe next could be around epigenetic programming. There are enough players from similarly different areas of involvement, research, development. So we can probably create similar space on mitochondrial-based therapies, targeting extracellular metrics. So there are, and I'm not saying that going after the hallmarks of age, because I'm not a fan of the model. I think it's very reductionist, while the truth is it's all integrated and it's all part of one process. But to simplify it, yes, I try to focus on the different parts where people are working and developing. So yeah, so that's one model, creating other events like that, not necessarily here in US, but around the world. So in Asia, in Europe, etc. Because the Phaedon Institute is an international society from that point of view. But there is more, yeah, there are other ideas that we are thinking, which maybe it's too early to talk more into details, but we want to create similarly opportunities that really build the next leaders of the field. So taking talents and give them opportunity, maybe during their training, maybe during a PhD, to also create curricula where they can build industry experience, governance, regulatory, because often, I mean, right now the academic system is you do this, you do your as an example, you do your PhD, and that you learn to do good science in theory. And then where do you go from there? Well, the typical is you stay in academia and you try to have your career there, and then yeah, you can go out, but then you have to find a way to do it. And I can see that as an industry person now. If you evaluate someone and say, oh, but you don't have industry experience, we're looking for someone who knows how to do this or this, which is typically what you don't learn in academia. But if you're looking for someone who can do a high throughput screening and you've never done it, you say, well, but you have to learn. So these people have been doing it for 5 years in a large pharma. Who do you think you're going to choose? Right? That's not always the case, but that doesn't have to be. Especially someone who worked with the top world leaders over years, from academy to industry to, and so we're working with different entities to create models to enable this, so people can build their own curriculum, come out of their training program, and choose what they really want to do. That doesn't have to be science, doesn't have to be research, doesn't have to be development. There are many other things, and very few people that are trained to do those things. So how to
Agreed.
accelerate that? Yeah, that's
Agreed.
one of the other goals.
We have, I have to say, so I'm a scientist by education, and most of our senior staff are also scientists by education. And I am biased entirely where I think that scientists make the best employees in any field, because I feel like we are heading more and more into a data-driven world, and scientists have been trained in how to manage data, essentially. I mean, maybe I'm not talking big data here, but they're familiar with it. And I feel like there's a lot of room for taking people who have the scientific academic training and growing them into new fields where that expertise that they have learned through academics is really supporting them in these brilliant ways in other fields. So I think that's really valuable. And I love that you guys are interested in doing that. We have an education program, but our education program is primarily in academia. Like we keep the kids in academia, unintentionally, maybe. Um, and a lot of them go into medical school and things like that. But we've also just started a PhD program. So if you ever want to partner on any of that, I would love to find ways to collaborate. Honestly, I love your vision for what you have going with your organization. I think it might be like the perfect time for that. There is so much happening in this field, but you're right, there's no overarching cohesive strategy for how to kind of focus and weed out the snake oil, as you said, frankly, and pay attention to what works and why it works, and to put the relevant minds in the same room, I think is a great way to do it. And to get also the young people who are up and coming the space and the training to pursue what they need to pursue in the field with the appropriate background is also a really wonderful idea. Really, I mean, I know we're fairly local to each other, somewhat at least. Um,
Yeah,
so I would
100%,
love to see how we can support you, frankly. I think that's
100%. I definitely want to, we will continue this conversation, because that's something that beyond this chat, um, something that I wanted to discuss with you for sure. So yeah,
yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of ways that we can interconnect. I've always been frustrated I wouldn't say always, but in the last maybe 3 years, I've been frustrated with there's a lot of investment people coming into the space who want to come into the space. And they're really interested in the high risk, high reward potentiality of investing in biotechnologies around aging, but we don't give them a good intro. We kind of throw them
hmm
into the pot, and they get a lot of contrasting views that if they're not an expert on, they don't have the ability to really decipher what is the best investment or the best track or the best option for a solution. And I feel like they get lost, and then they get frustrated, and then they just leave. And we're not introducing new people into our field in a way that enables them to make an impact. So
I agree. I agree completely. And it's, that's also a problem, right? If you don't educate or help or enable investors to support also the successful science, promising science, um, so it's a 360-degree problem, because then you see that there are no winners. Investors will walk away, the field will be pushed back. And so to me, and I always say that I see that everybody in this field are as collaborators. They are really not competitors, because I do whatever I can to help whoever in the field to succeed, because their success will also be mine. And if their failure will also, I will pay the price for their failure too. So I have no
Yeah,
interest. Yeah.
was it the rising tide lifts all boats, which 110% buy into, but you're right. If you get people, what was it, Theranos, for instance, with the, she just tanked that whole industry essentially,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
because it wasn't accurate and wasn't honest or transparent. And I feel like that impacts everybody. And I feel like same thing with the longevity and aging space. If we don't do good science, if we don't work together to do good things, and bad stuff hits the market or dishonest stuff hits the market, it's the whole industry is going to suffer the consequences. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
So I think we have to do a better job as an industry too. There's a lot of us players who have been in the space for a long time, who know everybody, who we can, and there's definitely, I think, I'm gonna say this gently, but like a gossip chain, right? So like everybody kind of knows everybody's business in a lot of ways. And I feel
Hmm.
like there's a time for holding each other accountable as well, right?
Yeah.
Not only just giving each other a hand up when they need it, but also, being able to have those honest, upfront conversations with the people that excuse me, in the space, and say, hey, the way you're going isn't the way to go. It's gonna have a negative impact on all of us.
Yeah.
Maybe you should consider that. And I think too often we are unwilling to have those frank conversations, even with people we genuinely know and care about in the space. And I think those conversations have to happen for the whole industry to rise. So I think collaborate, absolutely. Also hold accountable. All those fun management techniques that nobody likes to think about, but really I think will be a marker of success for our industry as a whole.
Agreed. Yeah.
Well, I know we're about out of time, but I wanted to thank you again for not only chatting with me, but for your patience, for your patience this morning, and getting all of that squared away. And we can all get angry at Meta and hope that they fix their Facebook platforms, um, and software. But I really appreciate it, Marco, and really I think you and I just need to grab a cup of coffee sometime. It'd be lovely to get to know you better. And thank you for this. This is great.
Likewise. No, thank you for, no worries about, we blame Meta anyway. So I'm surprised of how challenging it was to put that together. No, but for sure, it was a pleasure to give you. Thank you also the opportunity to share some of the thoughts and ideas and what you're doing. And I definitely look forward to grab that coffee and continue our conversation.
Absolutely. And, absolute success to Phaedon too. I'm really looking forward to your next summit.
Thank you.
And thank
Uh,
you.